prepare ourselves, if you will just put your hand over your eyes, and I open my eyes to see the spiritual truth today.
I open my eyes to see the spiritual truth today.
I open my ears to hear the spiritual truth today.
I open my ears to hear the spiritual truth today.
Now you just put your hand over your heart. Extend your arms. I open my heart to receive the spiritual truth today.
I open my heart to receive the spiritual truth today.
The spiritual truth that I'm working with today is that you are never alone. You are never, ever, ever alone. So sometimes we just feel alone because we don't have a formed human being there recognizing the pain that we're in. We don't have somebody who understands, or we don't trust to understand. We hate getting up and going to work on Monday morning. We have somebody we don't trust to understand the pain we're in around a betrayal that we just felt. We don't think we have somebody inform a person that understands how hard it is for money for us right now. And because we don't have that person that we trust to understand that, we mistakenly believe that we're alone. You're never alone. You're never alone. The presence of God, whatever you want to call that presence, Allah, Elohim, the sacred grandmother tree, divine intelligence, infinite wisdom, whatever you want to call that essence is with you all of the time. Well, that's great, Reverend George, but I actually want somebody to know how I feel. I want somebody who can help me get out of the mess that I'm in right now. Here's the truth, and you can take this to the bank. The only thing that can actually get you out of this mess and get you to a place where you will never repeat this mess again is spiritual principle. It's understanding how God works in our life. It's understanding how spiritual principle works and then working it in our life. That's what gets us out of our mess. Now look, I hope you have good friends. I hope you have supportive friends. I hope you have friends who will listen to you when you are in pain. That's so important. Nurture them. Reciprocate those friendships. Make sure they're there for you because they're helpful. But the solution is a spiritual solution. The solution is understanding how God works in our lives. God never gives up on us, ever, no matter what. No matter how many times, if you're like me, I don't just make a mistake once. I usually make a mistake, and a mistake, and a mistake, and a mistake, and a mistake. And it's the presence of God that gets me out of it. It's understanding how this thing called God works. Well, today we're looking at the spiritual wisdom, the spiritual nourishment from the story of Passover from our ancestors in the Jewish tradition. And you know, in this church we say truth is truth, and no matter where it comes from, it can help us. We honor those religions that we borrow from. We respect them and their ways. And one of the ways that we respect Jewish tradition is to do what the Jews do when they are teaching each other how the spiritual nourishment can be wrung out of their past. And that's by telling the story. So when we come to a Jewish holiday, we simply tell the story that's being told in homes all over the world. And this is the story of Passover. Now, I always like to remind us that we are in every part of every spiritual text. Whether it's the Bible, whether it's the Torah, whether it's the Bhagavad Gita, whether it's the Quran, whether it's the science, we are in every part of those stories. The successful part of us is represented there, and the yet-to-be successful part is represented in these stories, and we are in all of it. All of it represents our consciousness, our different stages of consciousness. Now, because we tell this story every year, the story of Passover, don't make the mistake of going to sleep. Don't make the mistake of saying, well, I wonder how long till Emily's back on to... No, stay awake with me here, because the story isn't changing. Can't change the story, but you have changed. The same mind that you're hearing this story with, the same spiritual ears you're hearing the story with this year, are not the same mind and the same ears you heard the story with last year or the year before that or 14 years ago when I first started telling the story. The questions you are asking yourself about your life, about who you are, hopefully are very different than the questions you're asking about your life not long ago. Now, usually I tell all of the story. I'm not going to tell all the story this year. I'm going to just pick a few parts of it out to really concentrate on in a little deeper way this year. But if you want, the stories in Exodus, I know none of you have Bibles here. But those of you who might have a Bible lurking around in your house, it's in Exodus 14, and I encourage you to read it because the whole story, there are teaching moments in all of this story. Don't miss the healing. Don't miss the healing that's available for us today. Well, it starts out during hard times falling upon the Jew because there is a new sheriff in town. And all of you who work in offices know that when you get a new boss, things are nerve-wracking because you know change is going to come. You don't know what it's going to be, but you know it's going to come. Well, when this king came to Egypt and began to do his reign, he looked over at what he thought was a small community of Jews, and he said, oh my God, they're growing. They're getting more. They're multiplying. And it's scaring me. It's threatening me. And he did what all of us do when we are threatened. When we're threatened, the main thing that we do is we try and control the outer. Whatever that is. When something comes up that is new for us and we don't like it or we just recognized it, we try and control it, and that's what he did. He tried to control the number of Jews that were coming into life, to being expressed in life. But here's the thing. If there is a good idea in the mind of God, no matter how much control you and I try and exercise, it will never happen. You cannot stop a good idea in the mind of God.
Yes.
But he tried. He tried. He decided that he would have an edict that would say, I'm going to kill all male babies. Now look, we think that's just terrible. Don't we think that's just awful? That's horrible. To have such an edict that you would kill such a precious thing as a baby in order not to feel threatened. But you and I do it all the time. You know, Passover is a spring holiday. It celebrates new beginnings and new buds of life. And you and I begin to kill new buds of life that scare us within ourselves all of the time. Because something is wanting to come through us that is so different than what we expected or what we thought or what we have been taught. I have a friend who's an evangelical Christian, and when he was a little boy, he tried to kill his love of dance because somebody told him that dancing made Jesus cry. Okay, look, he had a king that had a good hold on him. And that king wasn't Jesus, and that king wasn't God. It was somebody who was threatened by that kind of exuberance. I have another friend who wants very much to be an entrepreneur. He is, in fact, an entrepreneur. And his wife, correctly so, is worried that if he goes off on this crazy entrepreneurial idea, how are they going to feed their 3 kids? There's a king that's got a hold of him, and it's not his wife. The king is either-or thinking. When we have a king like either-or thinking in our life, it kills new ideas that are wanting to come forth in our life. Not literally, but in that killing the new bud that is wanting to come forward. See, we have that inside of us right now. Some of us desperately want a beloved, but we have made so many mistakes over and over and over again that we're afraid to take the risk. We're afraid to put ourselves out there to say, hey, I want a new beloved, God. Bring it on. And so we're afraid to do that. And what happens is a king has a hold of us. And that king that's trying to kill us is our history. That's the king. Look, if you keep coming to this church regularly, if you get in classes if you will commit to reading one tiny, itsy-bitsy little sentence a day from some spiritual nourishment, whether it's the Bible or the Quran or the Science of Mind magazine or just anything that is uplifting and positive, if you will do those three things, come to church regularly, get in classes, read something that is positive and uplifting, we will dethrone your kings. Any king that has you, we will dethrone that king in this church. And that's a powerful thing. That's a powerful thing for us. What if your life is wanting to express through you? I don't know what has you. I don't know what king has you that's keeping you in a limited way, keeping that new thing from coming through to you. But everybody has it. Each one of us have something we want to do right now that we're not doing. And we're not doing it because the king has a hold of us. Just like the king had a hold, or thought he had a hold of the Jews. Well, he makes this edict, and shortly after he makes it, a woman has a baby boy. And she hides the baby boy long enough to keep him when he's an infant. But you know, babies grow. And to keep him alive, and to keep herself alive, she had to do the hardest thing a parent ever has to do, and that is to give the baby away. So she goes down to the river and she makes a little boat out of papyrus leaves, and she puts this little baby Moses in the boat, and with tears in her eyes she sends him off. It's a powerful part of the teaching story because each of us have something inside of us that is too big for us to keep any longer. And in order to keep ourselves alive, we're going to have to give it away. Some of us have addictions that got too big. They were fine for a while, and then they got too big, and we had to give that away in order to have life for ourselves. Some of us, it's not addictions, but it's money problems. We have money problems, and the money problems have gotten so big, we had to give that addiction to spending away and deal with it in order for us to have life in our life. Some of it is poor work habits. Some of our poor work habits have become so known to everybody else that we had to give them away in order for us to have life. Now look, the analogy between a sweet baby and those things that we had to give away is purposeful, because we had to give away those things in order for us to have life, just like Moses' mother did. See, we often let those things that we try and hide and keep inside of us, those are the very things that will keep us and kill us. Not literally, but our spirit. They will keep the new springtime bud from thriving inside of our lives. Well, he made it safe. He made it down the river to a little eddy where the Pharaoh's daughter the king's daughter was swimming, and she picked him up and raised him as her own. A beautiful thing to do. And she allowed him to know that he was a Jew. And it's important because we need to know who it is we are. And one of the things that he did was, when we know who we are, we often need to be with our own kind. Now, we are a church that believes in oneness. We are a church that believes that as a foundational belief. There is no separation from between us. That does not mean, however, that we don't celebrate our uniqueness, and that sometimes our uniqueness needs to be with like-minded uniquenesses, like-colored uniquenesses. In other words, sometimes women just need to be with women, and men just need to be with men, and gay people just need to be with gay people, and people of color just need to be with people of color. It's part of the inclusion consciousness that we teach here. That it is absolute. We get each other's jokes. We don't have to be careful anymore. We get it. And that's powerful. It's a powerful part of us coming together as a diverse community. And so what happened was, Moses wanted to be with other Jews one morning. He wanted to go have some coffee with his brothers and his sisters. And so he went down to the village and he had a cup of coffee. That he did it frequently, and so he had friends down there. Well, one day he's down there and he has a codependent slip because there's a Jew fighting and an Egyptian fighting. Now, Moses was not invited into this fight. He doesn't really know what the fight is about. The Bible doesn't indicate he knows what the fight is about, but he inserts himself into the fight. Now, I don't want to get stuck here because I don't have time, but it's a minor teaching moment. Every time you and I stick our noses into family business where we're not invited into it, what happens is we have to leave, and that's what he had to do. He gets in the fight, he kills the Egyptian, and he has to run away. And so he does, and he goes off, and he's a shepherd for a long time. And he goes, well, first of all, he goes to a well, and he has another codependent moment involving some young girls, and he marries one of them, and there's some definite feminist teaching moments in this, and I'm not going into this year, and I promised myself I wouldn't, so I'm not. So, but then he works as a shepherd. Now, notice that I don't say he becomes a shepherd, because he wasn't a shepherd. You cannot become that which you are not. He works as a shepherd, but he never becomes a shepherd. And I want to ask us, I want to invite us right now to look into our own lives and ask us what we are being invited to become, not to work at, but to become. Maybe you want to become, you need to become a singer. You may work as a waitress or a teacher or something else, but you must become the singer. Maybe you want to be a teacher and you are doing something else, but you must become a teacher. See, you cannot become what you are not. My mother was not a mother. She worked at being a mother, but she could never become a mother. It wasn't in her wheelhouse to become a mother, but she worked at it. She needed to become a very creative person. She was very creative. And had she worked on becoming that, then this other may have been easier for her. That's true for all of us. We need to know what it is. If you don't know what it is that you want to become, come to Human Spirit, because John Donovan's going to take us through a whole process to know what our purpose is of becoming. It changes all the time. You don't just become one thing, you become many things in this lifetime. And you work at different things to be able to support yourself. But be clear, if you don't become that which you need to become, there will be some divine intervention. The universe will speak up. So he's a shepherd, and he's shepherding and shepherding along and shepherding along, and all of a sudden there's a burning bush. And in the burning bush there is God's voice that says, take off your shoes. You are about to become what you were always meant to become, which is a leader of men. Take off your shoes, for you are on holy ground. God is saying that to us all the time. Take off your shoes, you are on holy ground. Take off whatever it is that's keeping between you and your future. Take off your false pride, for you are on holy ground. Take off your excuses of how you grew up and who brought you up, for you are on holy ground. Take off this notion that you're too old to take on a new project, because you are on holy ground. Take out this idea that you can't get over a resentment you have with an ex, because you are on holy ground. And I want you now to become that which you were intending to become. And I am with you every step of the way. You are never alone. And not only am I with you, but I'm bringing everything I've got that you could possibly need. Everything. you have a question about what your next step is, I know the question. I know the answer. And I want to give it to you. You're on holy ground. You want to figure out how to forgive somebody that it seems like it's impossible to forgive because you want more money in your life and you know you can't have more money unless you do your forgiveness work. I know how to do that. I can help you do that. I've got everything you need. That's what God's telling us. I've got everything you need. And I'm not gonna stop until you are successful in becoming that which you want. It was a powerful story. Exodus chapter 12. Get it out today. If you don't have a Bible, get on the internet and read it. Contemplate each of the parts of the story. In the interest of time, I've had to leave so many parts of the story out. But there are so many juicy, juicy nuggets of truth that are in that story. Let's take this message into prayer. Knowing that you're in the heart and the mind and the love of the most precious I, the most precious God, the one that knows all, sees all, does all. That's in and around and through you right now. It is not God and you, but God as you. You are not all of God. You couldn't even wrap your head around all of God, but God is all of you. And when I get that, when I understand that, I walk taller. I smile broader. I laugh louder. I cry harder. When I understand that I am but the presence of God on the planet, as is each person in this room. I give thanks for that. I release this word into the law, and together we say, so it is.